They tried to evict me from my own land, not because I broke the law, not because I owed anyone money, but because a brand new HOA decided they owned everything they could see. 30 days. That's all they gave me to leave land my family has held since 1847. And the moment the judge saw what I brought into that courtroom, the whole thing fell apart. My name is Quentin Nash, and until all this started, my life was about as quiet as it gets. I live alone in a hand-built log cabin on the edge of what used to be my great-great-grandfather's farmland, tucked just outside a small Tennessee town most people pass without noticing. No gates, no sidewalks, no matching mailboxes, just trees, dirt, and a cabin I built with my own hands. My family's been on that land since before the Civil War. We've got the original land grant from 1847 real parchment seal still intact, framed above the fireplace. I grew up being told that paper mattered. I just never thought I'd actually need it. Then Cheryl showed up. I was out back chopping firewood when I heard tires crunching on gravel. Not a truck, not a neighbor. Something heavier, shinier. I looked up and saw a spotless SUV pulling into my driveway like it owned the place. It parked crooked right where I'd just raked smooth. Out stepped a woman in wedge heels, blonde bob sunglasses, too big for her face, holding a clipboard like it was a weapon. The heels sank into the gravel, and she actually looked annoyed by that. Right then I knew this wasn't going to be a friendly conversation. She didn't introduce herself at first, just stood there scanning my cabin like it offended her. Finally she said, "You can't have this structure here," and pointed at my home like it was a pile of trash. I leaned on my axe and waited. She sighed and added, "It's not compliant with Willow Creek's architectural standards." That's when I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so stupid I didn't know what else to do. I told her she was standing on Nash family land, that this wasn't Willow Creek, and that she was about half a mile off course. She sniffed, actually sniffed, and said, "Our records show your parcel now falls under HOA jurisdiction due to updated annexation lines approved by the board." Then she pulled out a manila envelope and waved it at me like it was gospel. 30 days to vacate, or they'd begin eviction proceedings. She read off a list: unregistered structure, non-compliant fencing, no approved landscaping plan. She said the word eviction like she'd practiced it in the mirror. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I just turned around, walked back into my cabin, and let her stand there in the dust. At the time, I figured it was some kind of mistake. An HOA overstepping, sure, but nothing that wouldn't collapse on its own once someone actually looked at the facts. 3 days later, the letter arrived from their attorney. That's when it stopped feeling stupid and started feeling heavy. The packet was thick. Fake maps with bold lines drawn right through my property. Citations for things like unauthorized log construction and historically incompatible exterior design. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, coffee going cold, flipping page after page and feeling something twist in my chest. They weren't bluffing. Or worse, they thought I didn't matter enough to fight back. That night I barely slept. I kept replaying the conversation, wondering if I'd missed something. Maybe some zoning change I never heard about. Maybe some obscure law I didn't understand. I'd always kept to myself. Never gone to town meetings. Never cared about developments half a mile away. For the first time I wondered if that had been a mistake. A week went by and the pressure ramped up. Another notice nailed to my fence. A follow-up letter threatening fines. The language got sharper, more official. I started feeling like the walls were closing in. And I hate admitting this, but there was a moment, more than one, where I thought about giving up, about selling, about walking away before it got uglier. It wasn't the cabin I was afraid of losing. It was the idea that someone could just decide I didn't belong where my family had lived for generations, that somehow a clipboard and a fake map were stronger than history. That's when I took the land grant down off the wall. I stared at it for a long time, running my fingers along the frame, thinking about my great-great-grandfather clearing that land with nothing but sweat and stubbornness. Then I made a call. Zachary Mullen answered on the second ring. Old friend. Used to be a property attorney before he burned out and opened a bait shop. I told him what was happening, and there was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then he said, "Do not move. I'm coming over." When he walked into my cabin the next morning, he was wearing a suit that looked like it had lost a fight with a leaf blower. He took one look at the land grant and let out a low whistle. "They're trying to evict you from this," he said, half amused, half angry. "Please tell me you still have the original." I handed it to him. He grinned like a wolf. "Oh, I've missed this." We went straight to the county recorder's office. Zachary pulled old surveys from the archive's yellowed maps that hadn't been touched in decades. My parcel hadn't changed since 1861, not an inch. The HOA's map completely fabricated. They'd drawn their boundary right over my land like they were playing a video game. It got worse. Zachary found an annexation document filed 2 weeks earlier claiming my land had been voluntarily submitted to HOA authority, with my signature on it. A signature I never wrote. Sloppy, too. Wrong slant, wrong pressure. Even the notary seal belonged to someone whose license expired years ago. That was the moment my fear turned into something else. We took everything to the sheriff. Sheriff Mendez didn't say much at first. He just held the forged document up to the light jaw tightening. "This isn't just HOA nonsense," he said finally. "This is felony fraud." By that afternoon, deputies were serving warrants at the HOA office. Cheryl's annexation scheme, as they called it, wasn't just about me. She'd targeted 3 other properties on the edge of the development. 2 families had already sold under pressure from fake fines. One was an elderly widow who had no idea she was even supposedly in violation. I didn't go watch them serve the warrant. I stayed home stacking paperwork, gathering tax records, utility bills, anything tying me to that land. That night I found a handwritten note nailed to my fence. Cheryl's handwriting, accusing me of harassment, threatening legal action. Zachary laughed when he saw it. "She's panicking," he said. "That's what bullies do when the script flips." The hearing came fast. County courthouse. Red brick. Old wood benches polished smooth by decades of arguments. Cheryl sat across the room with her attorney chin, high lips tight. The judge asked for the original land grant. When I handed it over, the room went quiet. The judge studied it for a long moment, then looked at Cheryl and said, "This document is older than everyone in this courtroom." There was no anger in his voice, just finality. He didn't even let her speak. He didn't have to. Zachary laid out the evidence, the forged signature, the fake maps, the tampered records, the sheriff's report, the DA's preliminary findings. By the time it was over, Cheryl wasn't an HOA president anymore. She was a defendant. The judge turned to me and said, "Your land is yours. It always has been." He warned Cheryl to remain silent. Anything she said would be used in her criminal case. That was it. No dramatic speech, no gavel slam. Just the quiet sound of power draining out of someone who thought she was untouchable. Outside, word spread fast. Small towns are like that. People I hadn't spoken to in years started calling, asking questions, telling stories. Turns out Cheryl had been siphoning HOA dues into private accounts, paying for her landscaping, her patio, weekend trips. The deeper the audit went, the uglier it got. Within days, the HOA was placed under receivership. Board members resigned one by one. Cheryl was arrested. Fraud, forgery, embezzlement. More charges followed when the accountant came forward. Then contractors. Then a private investigator she'd hired to dig up dirt on residents who pushed back. By the time the trial wrapped, there was nothing left of her little empire. I went back to my cabin, fixed the fence, stacked firewood. The notices stopped coming. The SUV never came back. The land went quiet again. Cheryl wanted control. What she got was a cell and a record that will follow her forever. Some things don't belong to bullies. Some things are worth standing your ground for.